We interrupt this broadcast with breaking news. A widespread phenomena has taken over the country, with viewerships in streaming services at an all-time high, drive-in movie theaters crowding within seconds, and official reports of breaking the internet 26 times in one day. 27 times in one day, America has been death-gripped by a strange entity called the 52-Week Movie Challenge. Anybody who's anybody just can't stop talking about the movies they've just seen. And it's all because of a book that's remained at the top of the bestsellers list for as long as what feels like eons. Everybody's a critic. The 52-Week Movie Challenge. Research from Harvard University has indicated that challengers are most likely to have three of the following symptoms. A massive list of films, according to different people, they have never seen before. B. A streaming service that doesn't sound like cable being hip. And C. By far the most common element of the three, a couch. We have a clip from the latest occurrence of the 52-Week Movie Challenge phenomena. In respect to the privacy of this participant, their name has remained anonymous.
This video should, trim all that down or something like that, make it lighter. Lighter.
Oh, you poor soul. In other news, we have... Wait, just a moment. Yes, I understand. Very well. Hang on to your seats, folks. I just received word that we have yet another occurrence of the 52-Week Movie Challenge. We go to you live on the scene. If you're gonna do a remake of a classic like Dawn of the Dead, then your first instinct would be to do something different, and while making it into an action horror film isn't a bad start, that's only the first step of making it good. Without an original execution to make a remake feel special, it'll just feel dead on arrival. Or should I say, un-dead on arrival.
Yeah, well, that's just like, your opinion, man.
Dawn of the Dead is a 2004 remake of the 1978 classic of the same name from late writer-director George A. Romero. The remake follows a nurse named Anna, played by Polley, who's smack dab in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. After waking up from a coma, Anna meets up with a colorful cast of survivors who hide out in a shopping mall. They all scramble to find the supplies they need to survive before the growing horde of zombies overwhelm and eat them alive. On the one hand, I'm glad that director Zack Snyder, yes, that Zack Snyder, remade Dawn of the Dead into an action horror film instead of imitating the original. We already have a satirical zombie film, and if I wanted to watch one, I'd just rewatch the original. That, or Shaun of the Dead. Just saying.
Yeah, boy!
The remake does take itself more seriously and emphasizes the stakes of survival much more. Making the zombies into cannibalistic runners is a nice touch too, making the goal of survival both a psychological and physical one. The acting in the remake is solid all around too. Everyone for what they're given makes their characters act and sound convincing, but on the other hand, the remake just doesn't commit enough to fresh executions from its few strengths to make it feel like an original retelling. Say what you will about Romero's early zombie films feeling aesthetically dated, but the zombies in those films effectively served thematic purposes. In Night of the Living Dead, they perfectly capture the embodiment of characters of different races and genders combating the violently dying gasp of the Jim Crow era. In the original Dawn of the Dead, the zombies themselves are a satirical manifestation of consumerism ran amok. And in Day of the Dead, the growing hostility that's replaced civil communication ultimately brings society to its knees. I guess you could say that the zombies in the remake evoke the most primal necessity for survival, but this quote-unquote simplicity comes at the unfortunate cost of depth when that itself was already set as the standard of zombie films. I will say that both films do deliver on the carnage expected from an R-rated zombie film, but there's still a discrepancy between the two. For the majority of the original, it's not really intended to be that scary. Watch Night of the Living Dead for that. But that was never really Dawn's strength. Once again, it was a satirical jab at consumerism, and how America's obsession with commercial goods has rendered us into, well, zombies. With the case of the remake, it's not that it doesn't engage in a social commentary, but it's how the characters of the film never really transcend from the framework of stereotypes. The nurse is the every person caught in the middle, there's the experienced survivor, the hard ass, the survivors wrought with emotion, and so on and so forth. The characters in the original were simple too, but plenty of time was given to see them react to a world going to hell. This made them feel like real people in a larger-than-life dilemma. That really hurts the remake, since the lack of engagement with these characters makes their choices range from meaningless to just flat out stupid. Take this introduction to the woman in her desperate need of attention. I mean, look at her. This is the body of a woman worth saving? Just look at her! I want all of you to look at it! Just to prove a point, look at the zombie, then back to her. Back at them, back at her. Isn't it obvious? She's turning into a zombie. Why the hell would Anna medically treat her if the woman's gonna turn anyway? This wouldn't be so bad except for the fact that this is a professional nurse doing this and she hasn't caught on to how this plague works? Yes, I know the film establishes that the plague is unknown, but how about some common sense? Even when the patient does start to turn, hasn't it occurred to everyone to go, oh, she's gone, you better kill her? Nope. Yes, I know she's a loved one, but again, these characters are too stock to convey any semblance of emotional truth. Also take the zombie baby scene. This guy's pregnant wife slowly becomes a zombie, and it's implied that the baby will also become one. Now, on paper, this could be a heartbreaking scene. What if there are concerns them thinking about bringing innocent life into a dangerous world? With that would come with so many emotional dilemmas, such as sacrificing parenthood for survival, dealing with an empty womb, and a bevy of other personal questions. I mean, it just writes itself. Hell, plenty of other horror films today, and even back then, nailed the anguish of motherhood. When viewing it within the context of the entire film, however, it just doesn't work. There's hardly any time to get to know these characters and what they're thinking about, let alone feeling. It should feel like a piece of innocent humanity has died, but it instead feels like a dilemma dragged out beyond rationale that can be solved without much thought. Look at this death scene in the original. Even when he's turning, that face shows everything what's going on in his head. A psychological struggle between humanity and savagery ending in utter tragedy. In the remake, I was so frustrated watching this scene that I just had to yell, just kill the damn baby and save yourselves, you f***ing idiots! You also have the mall security who are not only hard asses, but bigots as well. Okay, so I guess there's gonna be an arc where the apocalyptic decay challenges them to outgrow their prejudices in order to work with the others to survive the zombie apocalypse, and nope, they're just the funny/cool anti-heroes. Once again, I wouldn't mind that so much, except these characters have the depth of cardboard cutouts. But then again, the energy from the ESPN crowds have been very inspiring lately. There's also this montage in the film where all the characters have fun while they're in the mall. In the original, these moments were actually sprinkled throughout, making these characters feel more relatable, as if to say, your life sucks right now, but who wouldn't be stuck in a mall during a zombie apocalypse? Where the remake fails is that all of those eggs are put into one basket that is this scene. Instead of characters just acting like themselves, it just comes off as an awkward obligation towards the original. There's actually a scene in the remake that came really close to getting a good laugh out of me, but the film ultimately floundered that opportunity. There's a scene when the survivors manage to outrun the zombie mob, and they take an elevator to escape. The scene then cuts to all of them inside the lift, and the elevator music is playing while everyone has a moment of silence. One of them says, I like this song. I get that this is supposed to be a moment of comic relief, but where exactly is that levity? What comprehensible element brings them all together in this grim moment? Here's how I would have made it work. Come on, move! Now that would be funnier because A, I just personally think it's a cheerier song, B, it's a funny nod to the original, but C, by making that connection to the original, it does signify the good times, the lack thereof, that they still had at the mall amid these desperate times, making the fellowship of these characters still feel like they mean something. I know it's frowned upon in film criticism to talk about what you want to happen rather than taking it as is, but I'm sorry. But if my scenario ends up being just as good, if not better than what's actually there, then that's a big problem on the film. In fact, the late French film critic Jean-Luc Godard once said, in order to criticize a movie, you have to make another movie. This whole video could just be all about how bad the characterization is, but time to move on. Given the crew involved, the remake of Dawn of the Dead is especially disappointing. The writer of this film was James Gunn. As a screenwriter, he didn't show a lot of promise at first, but once he got his groove going, he got a much better handle on characterization, as well as honing in on his irreverent sense of humor. There's also Snyder. You'd also think that since this is a directorial debut, there'd be a lot of promise, and there isn't. If anything, the remake of Dawn of the Dead just showcases why Snyder is one of the weaker directors working today. Given his strengths, however, he seems like he has a lot of passion in what he likes. His attention to detail and adapting the visuals and dialogue from his source material.
Rorschach's Journal, October 12th, 1985. Dog carcass in alley this morning. Tire tread on burst stomach. This city's afraid of me. I've seen its true face. The streets are extended gutters, and the gutters are full of blood. And when the drains finally scab over, all the vermin will drown. The accumulated filth of all their sex and murder will foam up around their waists. And all the whores and politicians will look up and shout, "Save us." And I'll whisper, "No."
Homages to previous media, his taste in music, even though he uses them poorly, attracting talent to his films, and so on and so forth. The big problem here is that while Snyder wears his influences on his sleeve, he lacks a refreshing sense of invention. In a failed attempt of breathing new life into the relics of the past, his films just become aesthetically bloated Frankenstein monsters of nostalgia. You'd probably assume that I really hate this film, and there are a lot of things I hate about it, but it's just frustratingly mediocre.
Mediocre?
When I think of a bad remake, I think of one that not only dishonors the original, but goes out of its way to trivialize what made the original so special to start with. By comparison, the remake of Dawn of the Dead had its heart in the right place at least, by doing its own thing that hasn't really been done before, but its execution left so much to the imagination. I will say that I will watch this film over something like World War Z, a film that has absolutely no respect for its source material and does absolutely nothing special with what they invent. The bottom line is that the remake of Dawn of the Dead is a generic zombie film, and given its roots, this deserves so much better in entertainment and originality. On a scale of 1 to 10, the remake of Dawn of the Dead is definitely a mindless bloodbath. So what's your take on the Dawn of the Dead remake? If you've seen it, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, what's your favorite horror film of all time? Hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you'll know when I post my future videos. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at FilmGeekDave. That's all for today, and I'll see you next time when I review a coming attraction.
Bend over.
Where's your hat and your gloves?
Well, I have a hat. Just makes my head itch.